You are going on a road trip and you want to be well prepared to make the most of it. I'm Natalie, co-founder and creator of Planning Motion travel planning app. In this video, we will take a look at how, using Planning Motion map and calendar, you can easily and simply plan your road trip. We'll also take a look at how to prepare your phone's mobile applications so you can navigate to your destinations even if you don't plan to have internet access all the time during your trip. With Planning Motion's planning tools, preparing a trip becomes simple and even enjoyable. By the end of this video, you will have everything you need to plan your own itinerary, whether it's for a few days, a few weeks, or even several months. When you start planning a trip, especially a road trip, you may have some ideas of where you want to go. What you want to do is build your itinerary. Figure out how to get to different places, what route to take, get an idea of how long it will take to get from one place to another, but sometimes you don't really know where to start. So for my part, I start by creating in Planning Motion all the stages I really want to go on this trip. Here, I've already added Nashville, New Orleans in Louisiana, White Sand National Park, and also Carlsbad Cavern National Park. And there's also San Diego in California, where we'd like to go back. So I'm going to add it by clicking here. We'll click on Map to view the itinerary on Google Maps with what we've entered so far. By clicking on View My Itinerary here, everything I've entered in Planning Motion is sent to Google Maps application and I get the itinerary. Well, two things. Firstly, I can easily see that it would make more sense to go to Carlsbad Cavern before stopping at White Sands. And second, I don't see San Diego, which I've just added. I don't see San Diego on the itinerary. So I go back to Planning Motion and go to the calendar. Here I see the stages I've entered. At the start of our trip planning with Planning Motion, we don't need to take into account distances, travel times between stages, and how long we want to stay in each place. We can simply place the stages in order of travel to get a chronological plot of our itinerary on Google Maps. So we said we wanted to go to Carlsbad Cavern before White Sand, so I just moved them around in the calendar like that. Now we're going to take care of San Diego. I double-click on San Diego in the calendar to go to the stage list directly to the San Diego stage. Planning Motion sends what I've entered here to Google Maps. I had left this box empty. I didn't write anything in it, which is why my stage isn't yet on my itinerary on Google Maps. I write San Diego and also specify California. It's important to help Google Maps recognize the places we're talking about. What I mean is that we want to go to San Diego in California, but there's also a San Diego in Texas. I know there's another San Diego in Mexico. So in order for Google Maps to indicate the right place on the itinerary, I specify that it's San Diego, California. I go back to the Maps page and select Google Maps itinerary. What I have just changed in the calendar has obviously also been changed here in the list. View my itinerary, and I get my new itinerary with the inversion of Carlsbad Cavern and White Sands, and also the addition of San Diego in California. In addition to the name of the town or the address for the route in Google Maps, we can also enter GPS coordinates in Planning Motion. In Google Maps, I right-click to copy the GPS coordinate, and in Planning Motion, I paste it here in the box. Entering GPS coordinates as you go along will come in handy when you want to transfer your planning to your mobile devices for access on applications like Google Maps or Maps.me, which will be really great when you're traveling. We'll get back to this in a few minutes, but first, I would like to add another stage to the road trip, Bryce Canyon. We already know we want to go there at some point in our trip, but we sure are going to wait until April to go there, until the snow has melted, and we know that in April, there won't be too many people yet. We'll still be in low season. So in Planning Motion calendar, I select a date in April, but I don't have to be very precise at this moment. I add Bryce Canyon, and here, which will be transferred to Google Maps, I enter Bryce Canyon, Utah. I return to the Maps page to request a new itinerary updated with the addition of Bryce Canyon, and I copy the GPS coordinates and add it to my Bryce Canyon stage in Planning Motion. The Google Maps application gives us a lot of information to help us build our itinerary. At the bottom of the left-hand column, following the stage list, we can click on Details, and Google Maps gives us distances and estimated travel times between each stage. Here, between where we start and Nashville, it's just over 1,000 miles. With this information, I return to the calendar in Planning Motion, and I can start moving my stages around, or rather, start placing the main stages of my trip in the calendar. For Nashville, depending on the distance you want to cover in one day, you can give yourself a week to get there or just 3 or 4 days. There is no right or wrong way to do this. There's only what works for you. It depends on each person and the pace of your trip. And Planning Motion lets us do that. Lets us do it the way we want. With the stages, the calendar, and Google Maps, you can create your itinerary and see what's possible to cover during the period you plan to be on the road. I can start tweaking my itinerary, adding accommodations, places to sleep, activities, stops between 2 stages. I can add all the information I want to easily find during my trip. I can start by preparing the stages where I will be in the middle of my trip, or I can prepare the end of the trip first and come back to preparing the beginning of the trip later. It's really up to you. And if, after some time spent planning your trip, you decide to postpone the departure date, Planning Motion's Date Change tool will make your life a whole lot easier. By changing the start date of the trip, the Date Change tool lets you choose whether you want to change the dates of all the stages of your trip as well. And automatically, all the stage dates are also changed to keep the same chronology, but with the new start date. You have to think of Planning Motion as a toolbox that you can use or not depending on how you see your trip. We've seen the calendar, the map, everything you can add to your planning like stages, stops, accommodation, activities. We saw the date change tool. There are other tools also, such as warnings, budget tracking in the expense page with currency conversion, the planning statuses to keep track of where we are in our planning. And there's also the notebook. The notebook is a place in Planning Motion where you can write down information you want to keep for later and find it easily when you need it. There are tutorials on the Planning Motion YouTube channel that explains the application's features. Among others, there's the Getting Started Guide series, which gives an overview of the application and gives a good idea of the planning tools available in Planning Motion. Whether you've planned your itinerary very roughly or in great details, or somewhere in between, you can transfer what you've planned in Planning Motion to your mobile devices in mapping applications like Google Maps and Maps.me, and even to your Garmin GPS. It's so easy, and it's done in just a few clicks. You'll want to go to the Maps page in the Transfer section. I'll show you how it's done for the transfer to maps.me, but it's the same principle that applies to any other apps. These transfers are made by creating a KML file. So I simply click on Create a KML file. You may be familiar with KML files, the files used for data transfer to mapping application. If it's the first time you've heard of KML files and you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry, you don't need to. All you have to do is create the file, which is actually done by Planning Motion, and then simply import it into the mapping application. So Planning Motion has created the KML file, then you upload it to your computer, somewhere you can easily find it. You can put the file in a folder like Dropbox, Google Drive, or iCloud, depending on what you usually use, or you can send it to your mobile device by text or email. When that's done, I can go to my mobile device. Here on my iPhone, I find my KML file in the folder where I just downloaded it on my computer. I click on the file. You don't have to worry about the content of the file at all. Just click on the square with the arrow. A menu is displayed, and because the Maps.me app is already installed on my phone, the icon appears here, and I click on Maps.me. And the Maps.me application opens telling me that the bookmarks have been downloaded. Everything I've entered in Planning Motion has been transferred and is geolocated since I've entered the GPS coordinates in the right place in Planning Motion. If, for example, I click on this activity, I'll find the information I've added in Planning Motion right here in Maps.me. It's awesome when you're traveling. You can easily find everything you've prepared in Maps.me directly on the map, and above all, it's accessible even if you don't have internet access. It opens up a whole range of possibilities, allowing you to plan in many different ways. In an upcoming video, we'll be talking about the preparation of our trip to northern Quebec and Labrador in northern Canada. Olivier planned our trip in a way that allowed us to make decisions as we went along, depending on the weather, leaving plenty of room for change and improvisation. On the YouTube channels, there are tutorials showing how to transfer from Planning Motion to Google Maps, and we'll soon be adding one more for transferring to Garmin GPS using Garmin's Basecamp software. Subscribe to the channel to be notified as soon as it's available, as well as other Planning Motion tutorials.